different stories from like different states, different cities. So Linda Muhammad, she says that her favorite area of South Carolina is Spartanburg/Greenville area. Is that close to you?
That's exactly where I live.
Oh, wow.
Greenville, I wouldn't say is a countryside.
Not countryside, more urban.
Yeah, Greenville is like city. But you get out Pickens County, some areas of Spartanburg. Spartanburg County is a pretty large county. If you get over towards like the Roebuck, Moore side of Spartanburg, that's kind of getting out there in the country. But if you get, I'm kind of fortunate. I'm in a spot where I'm about 10 minutes from two kind of city areas within Spartanburg, Westgate and Boiling Springs. And I'm also, where I actually live is not within the city. So, I've got land. I'm not living right on top of my neighbor, but I'm not far from having to go somewhere either. Some places you have to drive 30 minutes to hit a Walmart.
But yeah, like speaking of the people there, man, it sucks that they've been suffering, like just like how all across the nation people have been suffering. And then this is the shit that they give us. Like people are literally starving. And they give us freaking crumbs. So I want to start out with some tweets that Justin Amash put out. He put these out December 20th. So what was it? Sunday. He was saying that congressional leaders don't want rank and file members to amend or read bills precisely because we will raise concerns on behalf of the people we represent. These quote-unquote leaders firmly oppose representative democracy and believe oligarchy must be maintained. And he said nobody should vote for a bill they haven't even been given time to read and understand. These people didn't have enough time to read. It's like what? Okay, so he says here 5,593 pages. They passed 5,593 pages they didn't read. America, stop letting this happen. Don't vote for anyone who voted for this. It's not okay. Representative government is important. Too many people have come to accept oligarchy. This doesn't end well. Everybody who votes for the two-party system is accepting oligarchy. They have to be made aware of it. It's not two parties in reality. It's one party. And me and Charles have conversed about this a lot, especially when we go on Big Talk, Little Talk, when we get in it with Israel, when we would try to make them understand. It doesn't matter. Like if you vote Democrat or Republican, we're just going to have a continuation of an oligarchy. Yeah. And the only Democrats that voted against this, there are more Republicans that voted against this. And we were saying that Thomas Massey was one of them. Rashida Tlaib said, this is what American people will feel tonight. She was one of the people who voted against this. One of the only two. She said, we have billions of your tax dollars for corporate meal expenses for a racist border wall, but only scraps for those struggling to pay for food, rent, and healthcare. The plan leaves people behind with no support for adult dependents, no hazard pay for essential workers, no student loan relief, no recurring stimulus payment, no retroactive unemployment insurance, no water shutoff moratorium, no aid to states and local governments. This bill will only last a month. Folks won't be able to survive with this bill as is. COVID-19 will force an additional 8 million people into poverty. Tulsi Gabbard was the other Democrat that voted against this. There was only two Democrats who voted against this, and she said $600 is a slap in the face to every American struggling due to the pandemic. You deserve better. I voted against a 5,593-page spending bill that gave billions to corporate interests, the military-industrial complex, and other countries, leaving crumbs for you who need help most. And I went over where most of that money went to when I covered this yesterday with Anthony and propaganda. But Tulsi Gabbard has a video, her expressing why she voted against this. But Charles, what are your thoughts on this, man? You who have just been followed by Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think?
I mean, she's completely in the right for voting against it. I mean, to be honest, $600 in my state, you could do something with $600. But her point of view was, okay, I'm a representative of Hawaii, for example, and that's who Granted, I say politicians represent the country, but she's elected in Hawaii, and she made a good point for her constituents. That doesn't cover hardly a fourth of the rent in Hawaii. Now that would cover the majority of my house payment. Don't get me wrong. I could almost make the full thing, not quite. Still a little bit off, but it's close. The problem though is this wasn't something just for us. If it was, we were talking about this, I think, before you started streaming, that amount would have looked a lot closer to something to around 100 billion, but being absolutely generous and saying that all 331 million people in the country were getting a check, it still doesn't even bring the number up till I think about like 184 billion. This is a $900 billion stimulus. There's even with that number and round 184 billion up to 200 billion, you still have $700 billion sitting out there that's not being used for health care for the American people. It's not being used for COVID vaccinations for the American people. These vaccinations are supposed to be so great. Why aren't they paying for us to get them? Okay? No, we're getting a $600 check, and $700 billion is either being floated off to countries around the world, or it's being used to fund art museums and the Kennedy Center. And Joel Osteen will probably get a few more $1 million out of this by the time it's over with too. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So, the attack is going to be, of course, is going to be you voted against aid for the American people. That's what mainstream media is going to say. That's what all the corporate Democrats and Republicans would say about it. But at the end of the day, I think there's enough people that have seen through this. Look at what happened to Tulsi Gabbard's Twitter account overnight. She went from about 895,000 followers. She's at over 1 million now. Mm-hmm. Because of what she did. I think people can see through it, Furthermore than that, remember, Trump's stimulus plan had plenty of waste for those people as well, but it had a $1,200 check involved. And what did Nancy Pelosi say? We're not going to let him put his name on a check, and it doesn't cover enough. So if his didn't cover enough, but wound up having twice as big of a check as this one did, and you were all for this one, if anybody was listening and paying attention, that speaks for itself.
It's absolutely disgusting. It really is. It really is. And let's look at this further, because I want to get your perspective on where this money is going to, like what your opinions are on this. Again, I went over this yesterday, but I'm going to go into more depth with it today. But first, here's a meme. It's Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi at a pawn shop, and they're like, best we can do is $600. Best we can do is $600. Yeah, fuck both of them. Fuck the Republicans. Fuck the Democrats. Neither of them are helping you out. No. And get this, you'll find some relevance here with this, Charles, because your channel was personally attacked with this. And shout out to DJ Alf7. Thank you so much for the super chat. And shout out to Thomas Oklahoma as well, making his way in here. And same thing with Red Sea Socialists. But Charles, look at this. The COVID-19 stimulus bill would make illegal streaming a felony. Congress looks to provide relief to U.S. citizens and small businesses, but the omnibus bill includes some legislative priorities for the entertainment industry as well. So we can't include clips of mainstream news segments, or else it would be considered a felony. Yeah. So not only are they making it difficult on us to live, it's making it difficult on us to report on how hard it is that we're living. So what do you think about that? Someone was tweeting at Tulsi Gabbard about what that was about, and she responded to him. And I think this is where they're going to try and say, oh, we won't come after the YouTubers necessarily. I think that the wording and the way she described it was, if you're setting up some sort of site and just streaming pirated content, like if you're trying to upload a full movie or something like that, you're just trying to profiteer off of other people's work, basically.
Likewise, and this would be a shame to see this go away, but a good friend of ours, Israel, you know, he used to always start his videos off with like a movie clip or something that fit kind of what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. But that would have to stop at this point. To me, when we take a news clip, okay, if we take Anderson Cooper, if we take Sean Hannity, if we take any of these people, we should be able to use that if what we're using is to do their job they're not doing and tell someone the truth or report on something. To me, that should fall under fair use. However, even if they claim we can, I'm not foolish enough to believe it. And I'm not foolish enough to believe it because before they passed this, I already had a video blocked by CNN on YouTube for using Cuomo's footage. It was copyrighted Cuomo Tonight. It was after the George Floyd riots. I did a video and they blocked my video, and it was already up. It didn't get blocked immediately. Somehow the video made its way around and they found it, and about 2 days after it was uploaded, they blocked the content. So without a doubt, this is just more censorship and more of a way to try to shut indie news up so we're not informing people of the things they don't want to tell them at the corporate news.
This was already like in the works. Like they were already prepping for this, and also seeing Biden's team that he's getting, his cabinet picks, like all of them, and his transition team also, ties to intelligence, ties to big tech, like supporting censorship. I talked about Avril Haines and how in Event 201, it was like a simulation in which they were discussing how they were going to censor quote unquote disinformation that goes against the narrative that they want people to know. That they're going to work with telecommunication companies and sources that that people quote unquote trust, like Wikipedia, Google, and how they're going to censor people. There's just more of that, like all together with this package. Like they're building up for more censorship, like how you were just saying. It's just making it harder for people like us to, tell the truth about what's happening. Like they're really afraid of that. They know that we're a threat, but it might be a sign also, if they're trying this hard, that they're really afraid. What do you think, Charles?
Oh, they are. This is why I said when some people were floating the idea about Donald Trump being, cheated or whatever, I said, look, if it happened, my opinion, the corporate Republicans probably had a hand in it. I don't know. I've seen things on both sides. Either way, except that Joe Biden's going in the White House in January. It's happening. Okay, the courts did nothing. But the overall point here being is the Mitch McConnells of the Republican Party, no matter what they did in front of the cameras to look like they were Trump's friend, didn't like Donald Trump. And it isn't because Donald Trump governed much differently than a Republican. It's because Donald Trump talked so much differently. His rhetoric, putting aside the inflammatory comments that could have been taken as racist or whatever, his overall message that he was shooting for was the people like myself who are working 40 hours a week and have gotten to the point we feel forgotten and abandoned by Democrats and Republicans alike. That's why they didn't like him when he ran in the primaries. They jumped all over him. They all, but right at the end of the presidential election in 2016, were basically kind of tipping their hat to Clinton. Okay. And kind of just saying like, oh, we don't like Donald Trump, the Paul Ryans, the Mitch McConnells. They didn't like the guy. And what he and Bernie Sanders, like them or not, got started was an outsider movement. And it got a lot of people who felt that there was no hope left in politics because they went out and voted for Obama and got squat. And they realized that. And they're like, okay, we give up. We give up. We went through 8 years of Bush. Then we voted for someone that was supposed to bring about change. And we got this, like, what's left? And then they came along and it looked like two people were there to shake up the system. And they got fired back up. And you've started seeing more of these outsider candidates pop up, some within the Democrat Party, some kind of within the Republican Party, and a lot of people are looking at that outsider thing. the people in charge, the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Mitch McConnells, the Mitt Romneys, they want to take everything back to the way it was before. Now, the Democrats have kept it where it was before. Unfortunately, the Bernies, the Tulsis, anybody that you want to call an outsider that ran this time or last time hasn't been successful in the presidential election. The Republicans were the one who dropped the ball, and now they're trying to pull everything back in. You know what I mean? So that being said, they're fearful. They're fearful because they know that there's this rumble within the population, and they're trying to quiet it back down. And they have clever tactics on how they do this. For example, the way they got people to go along with the Patriot Act was to tell you, we got to defend you from the terrorists. The way they got people to agree we needed more and more and more and more gun reform was to make...
He'll be back. It usually fixes.
The years...
There we go.
To give up your rights. If they can't use fear, they're doing what they're doing right now and just saying, well, it ain't going to... look, we're just trying to stop the people who are trying to stream Disney movies that don't have a license. But once they get it started, they can then use it for other things. Kind of the same way the NSA did when the Patriot Act was put in place. It was supposed to be intended to spy on people suspected of terrorism. But when you dug into the fine print, as Snowden revealed, they were able to take that wording and take that language and warp it to what they wanted, which then allowed them to define everyone within the country as a suspect and spy on everyone as a whole.
Yeah, so shout out to Israel, who just stopped by. I gotta have you on the chat with I gotta have you on a stream one day with Charles. I think the three of us have great chemistry. Same thing with DJ Alf 7. We have a lot of experience discussing together. Thank you, Elo Cello, for the super chat. Recently found this channel. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. You will make it for sure. Yes, we will continue the great work here. We are a community of independent channels that we get together. I bring them here. We discuss. We get different perspectives to discuss, and in the end, we all agree that we want to take down the establishment. Yeah. And they're seeing it. They're afraid of us. Just like Charles was just explaining to us. And Ronwell, hello. Thank you for coming. I was just about to give you a shout out, man. I'm going to talk about the tweets that you sent me the other day. So, Charles, listen to this. Listen to where the money is going to. So again, I ran this through yesterday with Anthony and Prop, but I want to hear from Charles here real quick. So this guy, Timmy Tierney, he tweeted out, he said the stimulus proposes giving $700 million to Sudan. No, really. So for regime change in Sudan, so that the U.S. can have an advantage of installing puppets there, and so that they can have a government in Sudan that is more favorable towards Israel. And he had a screenshot of that part of the document of the bill. And then somebody replied and said, looks like it gives $1.3 billion to the Egyptian military too. It goes on. So Walker Bragman said that the new COVID relief bill contains $500 million for Israel, as if we're not already spending a lot of money on Israel. The legislative package also contains $2 billion for Air Force missiles, procurement, and related expenses.
Yep.
$4 billion for Navy weapons procurement, $2 billion for Space Force. It should be, and then he goes on to explain how horrible this is, and how they're not giving money to struggling people. Instead, they're giving it to create more struggle, not just here at home, but in other countries as well. Alan McLeod, who's a journalist of Mid-Press News, said there's only $600 for us, but $33 million to overthrow the government of Venezuela, again, because we want their oil. We already failed so many times recently with Juan Guaido. And then he says there is also over $3.2 billion set aside just so the army can buy more missiles.
Yep.
Getting their priorities straight, the COVID relief bill also sets aside $19 billion for procurement of Navy aircraft. And then it gives a list of all of the different ships for the Navy, new ships for the Navy. And it lists how many times aircraft was mentioned. It was 208 times, munition 46 times, weapon 46 times, healthcare 24 times, doctor/nurses 5 times, masks 0 times. And there was even like if there's a Gray Zone article by Alex Rubinstein, who I have up here up in the screen right now, you should check out his article on the Gray Zone, which was published today. Some of that money is going to Tibet, and it's also going to the Dalai Lama to make reincarnation legal. Absolutely ridiculous. And then he says in this tweet, the new stimulus bill appropriates $3 million for Hong Kong rioters. What? I'm at a loss for words, Charles. What about you?
Well, I actually had something sent my way over on my Facebook page today because I actually took the time to get a little political over on my personal Facebook page about this thing. This is how much I hated it. I try to avoid that sometimes because you never know, work might be looking or whatever. But this is what I've got. $26 million for the Kennedy Center, $1 billion for the Smithsonian, $154 million for the National Art Gallery, $154 million for National Art, $167 million for National Art and Humanities, $14 million for the Woodrow Wilson Center. As you pointed out, $1.3 billion for Egypt, $700 million for Sudan, $453 million for Ukraine, $500 million for Israel, $130 million for Nepal, $135 million for Burma, $85 million for Cambodia, $25 million for Pakistan, and $1.4 million for Asia RIA. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I think you get the gist.
What were people saying to you?
That's where your remaining $700 billion went.
So in my Facebook, I have to deal with a lot of people who love Obama, who love the Democrats, who are more so neoliberal. In your Facebook, do you have to deal with a lot of like conservatives who like Trump and the Republican Party?
I do, because of the fact that, number one, there's a lot of people within my family or people that are friends with me who don't quite look into it as far left. They're in agreement. That's why I say they can see this thing as nothing but toilet paper. You know, a matter of fact, I'm going to take Kyle Kulinski's approach on this because he said that's exactly, before they put the $600 checks in there, he said that's what this needed to be. You know, they talked about we could be locking down again and go buy the toilet paper. They need to just run about, all 1,000 of those pages and make a bunch of copies of it. And rather than send us $600, why don't you just send us plenty of toilet paper so we don't have to go to the store and scramble for it? Because that's pretty much all that thing is good for.
Linda Muhammad, thank you so much for the super chats. Very much appreciated. Yeah, I mean, what a waste of freaking paper.
Yeah.
Like, it's not you're not doing anything to help us out. And like I said, you're creating more suffrage, not just in the States, but around the world. Like if you go across the country, you see lines of people waiting outside of grocery stores.
Yeah. And here's going to be the thing. Unfortunately, the typical strategy of the Democrat Party isn't going to work because this was the both of you. You can't just blame this on the Republicans this time. You know, this is something you agreed to. Okay. And I guess I could say, well, we had to give something that the Republicans would pass over in the Senate. But I guarantee you, even if they were to win those runoffs in Georgia and take the Senate, they are not going to give anything more than this. And this is why when me and you were debating with Israel going into the election, I said, look, because for a while there, he was floating the idea we can push Joe Biden left. And I said, it's not going to happen. These people are long gone from that kind of approach working. You're not going to succeed. And you're not going to succeed because they have no morals. They have no love for their country or mankind. They have love for their pocketbook. They're bought off, and if you don't have the money to buy them off, they don't care. They'll come on a television camera, they'll talk the talk, and they'll BS you to no end. But when it comes time to do something, this is what they do. They throw crumbs your way in the form of $600, and all that is to distract you from that thing about making copyright issues a felony. You're not going to hear about that on CNN. You're going to hear about that $600. But In the meantime, they gave you $600 and they send billions upon billions either to other countries or these institutions like the Kennedy Center.
Institutions that don't need it. Like, I'm
Right.
sure they can hold off in the meantime as people pick up and get the things that they need in order to survive